All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talkin Investing. You're here with Tom and George. Hello, George.
Hey guys. Hello, Tom.
We got a lot to talk about. We got a lot of earnings this week. We had a lot of news this week. So we're gonna talk about a bunch of different Bitcoin miners slash AI stocks. We're gonna talk about one Bitcoin miner that I don't think is a Bitcoin miner anymore, and I think it's gonna kind of shock people. So that's coming, and today was not so great, but we rallied all day. It started out awful. We came back, we rallied all day. Bitcoin did finish up on the day. Some of the Bitcoin miners got up to green. A few of them lagged behind. But all in all, this was not the best week for the Bitcoin miners. It's been a little bit of a rough stretch. That's why I labeled this one. This is the tough part, because this is especially this morning. If you were looking at the market, the first hour and a half that the market opened, you were probably in, I don't want to say in despair, but it did not look good. It did not look good. And we did rally back to a pretty reasonable place. And there's reason to be optimistic. Obviously, there's always room to the downside, just like the upside. So we're going to take a look at where we might go to the upside, where we might go to the downside. But I think we held an important line today. We did have one 15-minute candle go below that line, and that's it. But it held on the 30 minutes, 1 hour, 4 hour. It looks like we're going to hold on the day, although the day's not over yet. So we'll see what happens. I'm optimistic, and I will tell you, I had my kind of moment of crisis this morning. Couple hours in, I was just like, wow, they are really sticking it to us right now. But it's all a part of the deal.
I think you witnessed today is the beginning of the end of whatever they've been trying to shake out. I just have this stinky little feeling that you're looking at the end of it. I think it's going to end this weekend, and Monday is going to be a new horizon.
You think this weekend will straighten things out?
Yeah, I think it really has to do right now with the government shutdown.
That is a big deal, and that's another thing that wrecked the stock market. Got wrecked. It rallied back in the second half of today, but yesterday it got wrecked. This morning it got destroyed, and it's down on the week. You're going to see it's kind of floating around in Nowhereville. And it has a lot to do with this government shutdown that at this point, I'm sorry, I'm going to read an article and we're going to talk about the government shutdown, and I'm going to point fingers because this is somebody's fault, and I'm sick of pretending it's not. So we're gonna talk about it, because there should have been no government shutdown, and they canceled vote number 15 to try to open the government back up because they were told don't waste your time. So not good. That's not helping. I will tell you, 20% of flights are supposed to be canceled in the United States tomorrow. So, without opening the government up today, we are now, air traffic control is going home. Flights, tens of thousands of flights will be canceled, and things are just going to get worse and worse. And there seems to be absolutely no end in sight to this. So for those of you not familiar with American politics or couldn't care less, the reason you should care is it does affect your investments. And what happened is, it was the first Tuesday of November, so it was an election. Now, this is an off year. It's an off year. No presidential elections, no Senate elections, no Congress elections, but there were some mayoral elections in big cities, the biggest of which is the biggest city we have in this country, New York, where the Democrats won, and they won big. And it looked like they were talking on Wednesday about opening the government, and then the Democrats got together and said, look, you just saw, and it was the most left-wing candidates they have that won. So the far left feels very emboldened right now. And they said, listen, we're holding the line. We're not reopening the government, period, without extending. So their sticking point is they want to renew Obamacare. And I'm calling it Obamacare. You can call it whatever you want. And they're unwilling. They've had 14 votes that they voted no on to reopen the government. And under basically just saying, listen, nothing will change. Democrats don't get anything. Republicans don't get anything. But let's at least keep doing what we're doing so people can get paid and they don't have to go home and the country can function. Well, the Democrats said, nope, not doing it. And then they've done, both parties have conceded to this type of a deal hundreds of times. So there's no reason. And they have now doubled down on what is now officially the longest government shutdown in the history of the United States. And I don't see where it ends. I really don't. What do you think, George?
Filibuster.
They got to go. So there's the nuclear option. At some point, they can carve this one vote out and say, hey, for the purposes of, keeping the government open, we're not going to, they need a 60% majority in the Senate to pass. So even though Republicans have a majority in the Senate, it's not 60 seats, it's 53 or 54, whatever it is. So they just can't get a few Democrats to cross over. But what they could do is go nuclear and say, listen, we're going to just do a simple majority and pass this and open the government back up. So
I think that the Democrats want them to do that because I think they think they can get control in the next election.
I think it's Pandora's box. Every time they go nuclear with one of these, it opens the door to unintended consequences that it's just an unbelievably bad practice. We've been doing this for 250 years next year, right? We haven't had to, it works. They shouldn't have to go to that extreme. So that's what's happening.
The only thing I'll say, Tom, is it's got to be broken for it to be fixed. So maybe this whole thing with this government shutdown can show you how really broken it is.
Katie's asking, what's the Republicans' health care plan? And my answer to that is, I don't know what the Republicans' health care plan is. I don't know what the Democrats' health care plan is. What I do know is if everybody said yes today, all the people that are at work not getting paid or the other people that got sent home would get paid. And then they can figure out what to do with healthcare. But you don't hold, these are real people. They're regular people. Like air traffic control is probably the highest, most stressful job of any job on earth. And, they're sitting there not getting paid, worrying, am I ever going to get paid again? Am I going to get fired? And now they're sending them home. It just, the social programs, the food stamps, people, they're trying to jump through hoops to make it happen. But everyday people are suffering. So you can't carve out one thing and say, hey, I'm going to shut the whole government down and hold everybody hostage until you guys agree to do this one thing. The Republicans haven't done that. They said, we ask for nothing. We will just keep doing what we're doing, period. So at this point, I'm sorry. I don't, we usually don't talk politics, but it is affecting the stock market in a big way. And it stands to be, if something doesn't happen, this will end in a catastrophe. And I don't want to even think about the potential catastrophe when air traffic control is undermanned. So,
right. And I hate to say it, but I think they want major problems to happen in the country. But I think it's not necessarily one party. I think it's kind of both parties, Tom. But does the Democrats still want the $1.5 trillion? Is that what they're asking for?
What they're asking for is healthcare.
Yeah, the $1.5 trillion.
Right. So what is on the table is what's been always on the table. How we always avoid or end government shutdowns. We pass something temporarily to say, all right, nobody gets anything, but we're just going to, we're not going to send everybody home. We're going to pay people so they can work and do their job. So we've agreed on nothing. We haven't given into anything. We haven't gotten anything, but at least people get paid and the system functions. So that has stopped, and this is the longest one in history.
I think it's interesting that Nancy Pelosi announced her retirement this week. I think that kind of tells you the direction of the Democratic Party.
Well, she is losing to people very far to the left of her, is what's happening in the United States. That's what it appears like to me. And the Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer type people are being pushed aside for a much further left agenda. And we'll stop talking politics. I don't want to bring people down, but
hey, before you do that, Tom, hey, I put up a poll. If you guys could, what I was trying to do is figure out if people think that Bitcoin is bottomed for the year, meaning that it's not going to ever go lower than $99,500, that we hit the bottom. We might hit it again, but that's going to be the low for the year from going forward, not, previous, obviously.
So we bottomed out, and it looks like it's super even right now. So
yeah, that's kind of funny, kind of the way it is, right?
Do us a favor and hit the thumbs up button, hit the like button. It helps us stream out a lot. It's much appreciated. We got a lot to go through today. I didn't want to get too sidetracked with politics, only that this is impacting the stock market. The stock market had a very bad week. That's almost solely the reason why. So let's hope something comes to an end sooner than later here.
Do you think Bitcoin, Tom, is bottomed for the year?
I do, but I will tell you, we're gonna go through my numbers. I said last Friday and Tuesday on the members only stream, I thought we were bottomed, but I said it's just impossible. We can't say we're gonna be surprised if we go retest 99. That would be a 20% pullback. It's what Bitcoin does. So there's no way on earth anybody can sit here and be shocked that we're retesting 99. So I didn't think we were going to do it, but I knew that there was, obviously that was clearly on the table. And there are some numbers lower than this that are still on the table. I think this red line, if you're looking at the chart, right? This has done this is on the 15-minute. Forget the 15-minute. Let's go to the 1 day. Right? This red line, every time it got close, didn't go below it. We candlewicked below it, closed above it. Candlewicked below it, closed above it. Candlewicked below it, closed above it. Almost touched it. Candlewicked below it, and now we're having a nice green day today. So that's many times that this line has held strong. So I think this is a really, that's why I made it red, and that's why it's a bigger line than most of them. I felt this was a very, very strong line of support. But that's not a guarantee that it's not going to fail at some point, because if we shrink, I personally have a line at 93.5. I have a line at just under 89,000. So if we go all the way down to there, so right now, and our thesis was kind of, listen, we finally got to over 20%. It took all year, but we got our 20% pullback, which is usually a very frequent occurrence for Bitcoin. So this was a kind of a very stable year. But if you look, the purple line's down only 26%, and the green line's down almost 30%. So we usually get a 30% pullback. In the last bull market cycle, in a 6-month period, we hit an all-time high, crashed 55%, and then took out a new all-time high from there. So this is a much, much, much less volatile cycle this time around. I think that's part of the reason is because it's going to be a much longer cycle. There's a lot of good news ahead. We just talked about the bad news. There will, the good news is at some point the government shutdown is going to end. Can't last forever. Somebody's going to give in and do something and do whatever it takes. And once that happens, there's a lot of good things coming for the market, I believe. So I think we're still in a bull market. I've got 2 articles we can go through. One that's calling for the end of the world, and one from an unlikely source that's calling for Bitcoin to have a big run. So it's interesting. People are really, and look at this. Look, this poll is perfect. 50-50. That's where we are right now. That is the maximum uncertainty, right? Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Well, on the fear and greed index, we're in extreme fear. So fear, check. Uncertainty, this poll is 50-50. Uncertainty, doubt, yes. We're all doubting what's going on right now. So this is, to me, we're somewhere in the neighborhood, and you can never pinpoint the day. And this is what I talked about. I don't know. Maybe there's another week of extreme fear. Maybe there's another 3 weeks of extreme fear. But every time we hit extreme fear, in the history of the indicator, it's been a giant buying signal. So, take that for whatever it's worth. Do your own due diligence. Take a look at it. But if we go right now, if we look at the fear and greed index, this is the market. So this is the entire market is in fear. But more specifically, cryptocurrency that is in extreme fear. It's at 24 today. It was as low as 21 yesterday. And so this is why this is the hard part. And it is the hard part because you can look at all these and your rational mind can go up. These are great buying signals, but then you just watch the number, right? There's at the top of your portfolio, there's a number and it's how much it's worth. And when you see that number go down and then it goes down again and then it goes down again and then it's terrifying. It's awful. It doesn't feel good. And it's really hard during those times, during those types of moments. It's really hard to say, you know what, I'm going to put even more money in because it feels like throwing good money after bad. Almost every buying opportunity in history in the moment would have been described as you're throwing good money after bad. Get out get out with what you have and, save yourself. But that's the buy high, sell low mentality that they trick us into time after time after time as retail investors because they have all the time in the world and they're playing with, it's not even their money. So, and it's to scale so much money that, the manipulation, all of that stuff, it's very hard for us to play their game, but we can't, they run the game. All we can do is play. So I just feel like it's important to keep perspective in these down days or weeks or moments that it's not the end of the world.
Somebody said, Cosmic said, call me crazy, but I think Bitfarms may be the best value in this sector.
Bitfarms has pulled back viciously. Now, it went on an insane run, so it's still pulled back to up 500% from where it was 5 months ago. But, I mean, it's been cut in half almost. And I do think, the market cap is still really low on Bitfarms. And these energy stocks, if there's going to be an AI bubble, and I think there will be, we're not in it yet. We're just not. None of these are the signs of a bubble. The revenue to market cap ratios don't say bubble. The PE ratios don't say bubble. I mean, we're just not, this isn't what a bubble looks like. Now, on the very, very extremes, NVIDIA at one point hit $5 trillion, the first $5 trillion company in history. At that same time, Apple and Microsoft were both over $4 trillion. So the top end of the market might have been a little bit overheated, and that's the correction we're seeing right now. But let's be honest, for the last 25 years, every time Apple and Microsoft pull back has been a good time to buy. So I'm not saying that's going to be true going forward. Maybe this is it. Maybe they're finally overextended, but their PE ratios aren't screaming that. You know, these are companies that have $100 billion in the bank and they mint money. And I see no end in sight for that. Gambit Beer, I'd be interested to hear from Jamie Leverton, who is now with Riot. I think she was ahead of everyone else in high performance computing. That was her background. That is true. And it's and she kind of got, I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know what happened. It feels like she got duped and they took her job. But she landed on her feet.
She made millions. Don't worry about her.
Oh, yeah, I'm not losing any sleep over it. And she's got new stuff going on, and it's good stuff. And I'm sure she's prospering. But she was smart, and the game has totally changed. And I will say, George, we went in a 3-week period. You went from half kidding around instead of calling these Bitcoin miners, right? We've been calling.
Yeah.
George said the AI stocks, the high performance computing stocks. And that started as a joke 3 weeks ago, but now it's actually very close to a 100% reality. These are now, and that doesn't mean that at some point the Bitcoin portion of what they're doing isn't going to pay off for some of these companies, but some of them are just absolutely dropping it like a hot potato. The revenue that can come in from the power that they have for the high performance computing machines just seems to be multiples, and it's a much higher gross profit. Now, people aren't living in that world right now. IREN is. When you see what IREN's going to do next year, it is stunning. It is staggering. And the fact that IREN got crushed back-to-back days, again, I'm not buying. I'm still up 1,000%. So I'm not buying up 1,000%. But for those of you who missed the first run, I think there's a very reasonable chance that IREN doubles or triples or goes even, if we get into bubble territory, goes even beyond that. That's my personal opinion. So I've gotten rid of none of mine. I won't even think about it under 100. And I doubt very much I would sell at 100. That's my personal opinion. So let's go look at what IREN's doing. Bitcoin miner IREN posts record first quarter earnings. Looks to growth in AI. The company is targeting, get this, $3.4 billion in AI cloud annual run rate by the end of 2026. Most of these companies are still not even making $100 million a quarter. These guys are talking about making $3.4 billion on the top line next year. And if you dig deeper, they're talking about doing it at an 85% gross profit margin. And they've already got contracts to fill up a lot of this. So this is not speculation. You know, there's no guarantee they're going to get to 3.4, but they're going to get to places that are, they're going to have more revenue than any other company on that board, and it's not going to be close. And there's other companies that are gearing that way that may have a 2027 like that or a 2028 like that. But that's why I think like this is not the bubble. This hasn't even started yet. Sour Melon Gaming. IREN will go over 200. Mark it in your diary, Tom. So Sour Melon Gaming was the first person to say IREN's going to go over 100. And that was at a time where that seemed almost, wishful thinking. But analysts agree. And to put it in perspective, Wall Street's biggest IREN bull hiked the price target to $142 after a $9.7 billion deal with Microsoft. And that number is a little misleading because that is a 5-year deal. That's not a 25-year deal where it's a couple $100 million per year. That's a 5-year deal. And you know that if Microsoft is happy with what IREN is doing, and by all accounts, this is what IREN's been telling us from day one. They never wanted to be called a Bitcoin miner. And they made it a point at every single earnings meeting to say, we mine Bitcoin, but we're not a Bitcoin miner. We make data centers. That is our expertise. We're better than everybody else at it. Now, whether that's true or not, you guys can decide for yourself. But it's how they've always framed their company. And it's what they're doing. And I will tell you, I went through their entire financial statements and their investor package. They have officially disavowed Bitcoin. There is now, I used to say you have to go to the investor relations page to even know they mine Bitcoin, but now you don't even know there because it's gone. And it's still the majority of their revenue in this quarter. But you can see let me go to their financials. Here. Bitcoin miner IREN posts record first quarter earnings. Now, this just came out yesterday. Looks to grow AI. The company's targeting 3.4 billion AI, expanding to 140,000 GPUs. So, that's massive to put it in perspective. Hive has an extremely aggressive plan. They're like 10xing what they're doing, and they hope to get to 30,000 GPUs. This is 140,000 GPUs. And they're talking about $3.4 billion of revenue on those 140,000 GPUs. But what's interesting is, so the Bitcoin miner that is moving into AI reported record profit and revenue in the quarter. Net income rose to $384.6 million from a year earlier loss. Revenue rose 355% to $240 million. Almost all of that, like 230 something million dollars of this 240 million was Bitcoin mining. So while they remain 95 to 99% a Bitcoin miner, it's about to change because these other contracts are going to kick in. And so this is the best quarter. This is the most revenue they've ever had by a mile. It puts them among the top revenue companies out of all the ones that we look at. And they haven't even gotten, this includes zero of the big contract that they just got. And I think likely more to follow. Nowhere in their entire 10Q investor presentation or press release do they even tell us how much Bitcoin they mined in the quarter. They don't even say it. It's not in there. So that's how much they care about Bitcoin. They literally aren't even reporting to us how many Bitcoin they mined because I believe they perceive any talk about Bitcoin is not fueling the growth engine of their company and of their stock, right? Because a company that still does, it's very capital intensive. So for their stock to 10x like it did is very good news for them. And Bitfarms did the same thing. Bitfarms went out and borrowed $500 million at the peak of a very quick 10x in their stock. And by very quick, it was maybe 4 or 5 months. The stock went from 68 cents to, near the preferred stock is callable at $6.86. That's a 10x from where it was. So, the point being, They're just, a lot of these companies are starting to disassociate themselves with Bitcoin in appearance, even if they're mining Bitcoin. Now, the best I can tell, they're actually going to shut down all their Bitcoin mining. I think this company is going to mine no Bitcoin in 2027. Not 2026, right? They got to 50 exahash. It's all their revenue right now. But if 2026 works out like they plan, I believe by the end of that year, they'll be completely out of Bitcoin mining and they will be a data center company. So to me, that's shocking because they worked very hard to, they had 1 month. Remember, they had 1 month 3 months ago where they mined more Bitcoin than even Marathon, which means they mined the most Bitcoin out of any publicly traded Bitcoin miner, and they want nothing to do with it. So that's how big the potential in this AI space is, in my opinion. LB, thanks for the super chat. BitDeer to the sun, the moon on Monday. Forget everything else. Yeah, we're going to get BitDeer's numbers. And I think BitDeer has a lot of room to run. So I wouldn't disagree with that at all. I don't know about forget everything else, but I do think BitDeer is going to be a big winner. And I do have some of that. I don't have any. The one that I really want in on, and it's really hard because there's so many bargains. I want in on TeraWulf. They are scaling up to be potentially even bigger than IREN. There's several companies that have their sights set on scaling to this level or double this level, and they were just never going to get there as Bitcoin miners. Bitcoin economics have been much more difficult this cycle than in any previous cycle in history. It's not even close. The Bitcoin network's over a zettahash, right? The Bitcoin, let me find the Bitcoin difficulty level is at an all-time high, 155 trillion. I mean, this is an all-time high, and it's up significantly from the beginning of the year. We're starting a new block, so they adjust this at the end of each block, which is approximately every 2 weeks. And so maybe this is going to start to level off because, with Bitcoin at 100,000 and the network at 153 trillion, the difficulty level is such that, they're making a lot less money, a lot less gross profit than they used to be. Now, most of the companies we follow still are very cash flow positive, even in the environment that I just described. So their EBITDA, they're still positive EBITDA, even in that environment. And I think we all suspect Bitcoin's going up from here. So, that will change. But you're seeing companies drop out of. TeraWulf was all in on Bitcoin mining. They're no more. They stopped at 12 and they're done. Bitfarms was going to try and get to 35 exahash. They stopped at 17 and they're done. IREN stopped at 50 and they're done. And I think they have less than 50. They're not telling us right now, but it appears to me they've already taken ASICs offline to put GPUs in. So I'm guessing that, that's their course for the next year. We'll see. And I don't think they're going to tell us because, again, they didn't even report in their quarterly report. They didn't tell us how many Bitcoin they earned. They didn't tell us how many exahash they have running of Bitcoin miners. They just, like it doesn't exist. Their entire thing was about high performance computing. Ethan's saying, sell Bitcoin, buy IREN. I mean, I like a mixture of both of those. I think these are two successful deals. Pogo saying, TeraWulf was on sale today, Tom. And you're right, it was. I didn't buy anything today. I bought a few things earlier in the week. I didn't buy anything today. And if we dip down, when we look at the 1 day to those, we had that line at around 93,000, one just under 89,000. If Bitcoin does take one more downturn, and if the Bitcoin miners go with them, my next buy would be TeraWulf. So it's not financial advice. You guys buy whatever you want. I don't even own any TeraWulf, but I just see what they're doing. They just borrowed $3.2 trillion and then a few weeks later went out and borrowed, billion. I get carried away. $3.2 billion. And then 2 weeks later, they went out and borrowed another $1 billion. So if you don't think they're gearing up with a massive amount of energy and GPUs, and they're priced, their market cap is a quarter of IREN's market cap. So if they can get deals and if they can execute and perform, you know, that stock could have a gigantic run. There's no telling where these stocks can go. Is Mara, so Cosmic Contrarian said, is Mara the next Bitcoin miner to transition to AI infrastructure? And the answer to that is yes. And so I will show you, they actually just answered that question. Mplex and Mara announced, this was November 4th, earlier this week. Mplex and Mara announced collaboration on integrated power generation and data center campuses in West Texas. This is going to be a joint venture for 400 megawatts with the potential to scale up to 1.5 gigawatts of high performance computing. So they went from, you know, dabbling at the edges of high performance computing to all in. And if you look, Mara announces third quarter 2025 results. So again, here's a company, to me, this company their stock got crushed again this week. They're down on the year. They were down big time on the year last year. They are, in the last 2 years, Marathon's 10x their exahash. They've strengthened their balance sheet. They have 53,000 Bitcoin, and they're worth less today than they were then. All they're worth is their Bitcoin. They're at a 1 MNAV, which means they're valuing the business itself at $0.00. And to me, that doesn't make sense. So, you know, if you guys think this is a terrible company, then maybe that makes sense to you. I don't feel like that's the case. So here, Mara Holdings outlines AI and energy shift with Mplex LOI. Q3 results impress. So they beat on results. A lot of these companies, by the way, we'll get back to IREN, they absolutely 10x'd the expected results from an earnings standpoint, and their stock tanked. So sometimes it's a sell the news situation, but don't be fooled. That's all I would say. So Cosmic Contrarian, I think the answer is yes. They're telling us right now, this week, that they are here. Mara Holdings outlines AI and energy shift. So they're doing it. That makes everybody. There's none left that have not shifted to at least a dual revenue stream. And some now, I think, are starting to shift to not even be Bitcoin miners anymore and just be data centers. So it's a very interesting time for these stocks that have taken a very interesting journey. And being Bitcoin miners, you know, has been good news, bad news, because while the profitability hasn't been what it's been, they didn't get the big boost yet. And I say yet because I don't think we've had the blow off top on the bull market. We'll go through that later. But what we've experienced so far looks in no way, shape, or form like the 3 previous cycles. So if we are going to have a blow off top, it has not happened yet for sure. And the only question is, are we going to have that? Has the whole thing changed? Is the 4-year cycle gone? in place of a different dynamic, and I think there's a lot of reasons to believe that there's some really good catalysts for Bitcoin over the next 6 months, and I think its trajectory will continue to go up. Its adoption will continue to grow. You're not putting the genie back in the bottle at this point. This is what's happening. This was yesterday. Trump says he wants the U.S. to be the Bitcoin superpower, cites competition from China. In a Miami speech, the U.S. president said his orders ended a, quote, war on crypto, mentioned that crypto helps the dollar, and warned China could gain if Washington stumbles. I just want to read a couple of these quotes because I always find them amusing. Trump says he wants to become the Bitcoin superpower and the crypto capital of the world. So George, to your point, in the past you've mentioned, are they gonna, these AI data centers and Bitcoin miners, are they gonna start getting some government money? Because
I think that they're gonna need to.
Right? I mean, you've got the president saying he wants to be the crypto capital of the world. He wants to be a Bitcoin superpower. Well, is he going to help the people trying to do it? We'll see. It's very common we've already done it with chips, right? They put hundreds of billions of dollars into the chip companies. So this is the next natural progression. Let's just do a few quick. He argued the sector is sizable and backed by business leaders, quote, because it's a big business. It's a big industry, and I have a lot of people that are great people, great business people. They're in other businesses, but they're in crypto too. So it takes a lot of pressure off the dollar.
Maybe Bitcoin's name really is beta test coin.
Yeah. Looking abroad, he warned of competitive pressure, quote, and don't forget, if we don't do the crypto properly, China wants to do it. They're starting it, but they want to do it. Other countries want to do it too. If we don't do it properly, it's a big industry. So, in the very choppy way that he can talk sometimes, he's basically saying, we're going to allocate. This is an emphasis for this. And by the way, we all remember he ran on this. Like, this was a big part of his platform was we got a pro crypto, no CBDC. We're not digitalizing the dollar. We're going to do Bitcoin instead. And what they did to me was genius. They did, and they called, in fact, they called it the Genius Act. They put regulations on stable coins so that essentially the vast majority of stable coins, I believe, and the other countries and the EU's scrambling, trying to get some stuff together. Japan's trying to get some stuff together. But the bottom line is the stable coin market is U.S. backed by the U.S. dollar, which in large part means they own U.S. treasuries. So I think that we got out ahead of everybody. That's the current status of things. And with a crypto-friendly environment, I really don't see any reason why that would change. And it allows us to not have a digital dollar, which I think most people here probably would be against. That's the ultimate. That's the ultimate opposite of DeFi. That's UltraFi.
We're having fun in the chat, Tom.
What's happening? I see myself in there, but
Sue Penis. Everybody loves Sue Penis. I mean, Ennis. Sorry, the P slips. The P slipped in. Sorry. I mean.
Oh boy.
God. When do you think? Now let's be serious, Tom.
Okay.
Or be Shirley.
Surely you jest.
Do you think, when do you think there's going to be an explosion for HPC, for the high performance AI guys?
When do I think their stocks are going to explode?
Explode, double, triple. Do you think that's in the next year, the next 5 years, the next 3? What do you think?
I think it's in the next 12 months, and I think it's going to be sooner than later. That would be my opinion. And you're going to feel some pain first because they haven't scared everybody out yet. But, I mean, you see price targets. IREN went from getting price targets at $20 to $140 in a 6-month window. That doesn't happen. Find me another example of that. And the rest will follow. We're already had some big runs on these, but most of these companies are still at very low market cap. So that's where you see, is it a bubble or not? What's the market cap of this company versus their revenue, right? IREN's talking about a $3.4 billion of annual run rate. So you're looking at a top line at $3.5 billion. They're, after today's action, there may be a 16 or 17 billion dollar market cap company. That's not out of whack at all. Their PE under that scenario, they earned let's go to the numbers. This is back to Bitcoin miner IREN posts record first quarter earnings. Net income rose to $384 million. That was over $1 a share for the quarter. They're only trading at $60. They made $1 this quarter. They got the big deal, so none of that's even in that number. Net income in the period ended September 30th rose to $384.6 million, reversing a year-end loss of $51 million, the company said on its website. Total revenue rose 355%. 355% year over year. $240.3 million, with Bitcoin mining accounting for 200. So remember I told you most of this 240 was Bitcoin. 232.9 million of the 240 was Bitcoin. That's 50 times the Bitcoin revenue they had in the same quarter last year. 50 times. And by the way, they don't even want to admit they're a Bitcoin miner. So this is how much everybody thinks AI has left to run. Here's a company that 50x'd their revenue to where they became from one of the smallest Bitcoin miners to one of the biggest, and they don't even want to admit they're mining Bitcoin. And a year from now, I don't think they will be. That's my personal opinion. That is based on nothing that they've said. They did say in their investor presentation, let me see if I can find it real quick. So here, like this is page 1. No Bitcoin. Microsoft AI cloud contract growth outlook 140K GPUs. Well, you don't mine any Bitcoin with GPUs. And there's a page in specific that just a quick, super quick. Here's a picture, and that picture is labeled transition from ASICs to GPUs at Prince George. So they're telling us. They're not giving us the numbers, but they're literally telling us in their investor presentation, transition from ASICs to GPUs at Prince George. So this is what they're doing. They are all in on AI. It's according to them. Let me see if I can find their gross profit talk. So you can see they're going from $500 million to $3.4 billion. This is how they're getting there. And I'm not going to find where they talk about profit, but this is much higher gross profit stuff than Bitcoin mining is right now. It just is. I mean, there's money to be made as a Bitcoin miner, and I think the Bitcoin miners will still get their run from mining Bitcoin, but not right now. Not right now to the extent where they don't even want to admit they're mining Bitcoin. That's how much that's changed. Back to the 15-minute chart, we seem to be bumping into the $104,000 line of what used to be support and now looks like a little bit of resistance. But, you know, to your point, George, we're way off of our lows. On the 15-minute time frame, we had one candle that went below this line. So change that to the 1 hour. That candle still closed below that line on the hour. Go to the 4, and then the important one is, so on by the time you get to the 4 hour, I usually look at the 4 hour and the 1 day. So this line held up perfectly on the 4 hour, and then if we switch over to the 1 day, it looks exactly the same. It just held. It doesn't mean it's guaranteed that it's going to hold forever, but you can see here, this is what we talked about on the members only stream. We got a total reset here on the RSI down to 32. I mean, that's the lowest it's been since March of this year. So that's a full reset on the RSI. We had a bearish crossover on the MACD on the 1 day time frame. And now you can see we've gone from red candles on the histogram to pink candles on the histogram. And that was what I was talking about happening. The shift from red to pink. As many times as not, this is when the run starts in Bitcoin, not when the bullish crossover happens. Usually that's in the middle of a Bitcoin run. It's when we turn from red to pink on this histogram and start heading towards. Now, sometimes there's a fake out. You know what I mean? We had this run up, but then it failed, and we had another bearish crossover. So, you know, there's no guarantee that the next bullish crossover is to the moon, but I do think this resolves itself, even if somehow we do end up retesting this line or this line. I think this resolves in hitting a new all-time high before the end of the year. That's my opinion. Best HP, so the current poll for those voting, the best HPC to invest in, best return in the next 6 months right now. So we've got 4 competitors, and you want to do 2 rounds of this, George, and do a runoff?
Sure. Yep.
We got a clear winner in the first group, actually 2 clear winners. It looks like it's going to be hard for anybody to catch. Right now, Cleanspark at 42%, IREN at 31%, Hive at 19%, and TerraWolf at 8%, a surprising 8%. So I think people are sleeping on TerraWolf, and I got to include myself among that since I own no TerraWolf. But I'm looking. I'm very interested.
Okay, well, who do you want the next 4 to be?
Let's see. So we just did.
You want your BFF Bitfarms?
Absolutely, they got to be in there. Riot's got to be in there. CIFR's got to be in there.
What about Core?
Oh, Core's back. Core's back on the game. That's right. They're back in play. So Core Scientific.
Is Core CORT?
CORZ. Because that's the other one. If I'm going to buy 1, it's going to be Wolf. If I'm going to buy 2, it's going to be Wolf and Core Scientific.
And then whoever wins, we'll put them all together.
That's right. The top 2 here, we'll go with the top 2 there, and then we'll see what everybody has the highest level of confidence in. And again, we are now calling this HPC, high performance computing stocks. At the moment, That's what these are. These are high-performance computing plays. I understand the fact that they're all Bitcoin miners, that from a revenue standpoint, it still remains the vast majority of these companies' revenue. But a few of these companies have set themselves up already where that will not be true in 2026. The majority, by far, of IREN's revenue in 2026, I'll go so far as to say the vast majority, is going to be high-performance computing. And I don't think they're going to be alone. So we're seeing a shift. Now, a lot of people have a lot of very expensive ASIC machines that they're running. So I don't know that they're all going to go throw them out tomorrow. I'd get my money's worth out of those. You already paid for them, right? So you're going to take the hit on depreciation, get your cash out of there. So I would run those into the ground if it was me, and then build out other infrastructure for the high performance computing. You've already bought the Bitcoin effectively by buying the machines. So turning them off doesn't make sense unless the opportunity is so great that it actually, the math works to just throw them out. And IREN's, I think, maybe looking a little bit at that type of a scenario. But what you will notice is there's 2 or 3 Bitcoin mining companies increasing in exahash. They were the ones that lagged behind, and they're trying to catch up to the pack. But all the top ones, Marathon hasn't, they're like 3 months in a row into adding 0 exahash. Riot's much more than that, months in a row into adding anywhere from 0 to 0.1 exahash. Cleanspark's 3 months in a row into adding 0 exahash. IREN is at least 3 months into adding 0 exahash, if not subtracting exahash. Bitfarms isn't adding exahash. TeraWolf isn't adding exahash. So this game is changing before our eyes. I will tell you, Gambit Beer, I haven't taken enough of a look at it yet, but I went through Hut's financials, and they still, I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't understand their business model. I don't understand their revenue. Here, I might have this open. So this is Hut. Revenue for the quarter. To put things in perspective, remember, IREN was $240 million of revenue for the quarter. Hut, $83 million. Net income of $50 million. Adjusted EBITDA of $109 million. So all those are pretty good. Total energy capacity under management of 1 megawatt as of September 30th. Development pipeline. Now, here's where this gets very fuzzy to me. So they have 1 megawatt, which is good. 1, 2, some people are forging towards 3, right? IREN showed the path to 3 next year. Gigawatts, which is 1,000 megawatts. But they say stuff like we're developing a pipeline of 8.6 gigawatts. Well, what does that mean? How much money is that going to cost? So their gross profit is very low. If what they're doing is high performance computing, it doesn't make sense because it's much lower gross profit than everybody else. Now, maybe all the new stuff they do, this 8.6 gigawatts that they're chasing, and by the way, they don't need to get 8.6 to be a winner. If they go get 1 or 2 or 3 more gigawatts and they do a good job allocating it all to high performance computing and they're buying energy at a good price, then they will be a winner big time. But at the moment, their financials don't make sense to me. Here you can see. So compute $70 million. Cost of revenue compute $22 million. So that's a nice gross profit. I'm not sure what's rolling up. This is they're doing this on a consolidated basis because they're a majority shareholder in American Bitcoin. So a lot of that is rolling up to this. So power, I think compute is actually their Bitcoin mining is included inside of this number. I'm not sure of that because just none of these other numbers are big enough. Power speaks for itself. That's their power number. So power, 8.3 million of revenue, 6.49 million of cost. They're not having high gross profit on their power. Digital infrastructure, 5.1 versus 3.8. So I'm just confused. I guess I got to spend more time on this. At a first glance, I really only gave this a half an hour glance, and I left, as has been the case since they merged, I left more confused than I was when I got there. So I will try over the weekend to get up to speed on what's going on here because, you know, if they do have a plan to 8.5 gigawatts of GPUs, they're going to have 100x. But, you know, I'll believe it when I see it.
Tom, we don't talk about BTC anymore.
Aha. Well, funny you should mention that. Let's talk about them. They finally put out a press release. Now, they did not give us a monthly operational report. But today, American Bitcoin adds 139 Bitcoin, increasing their strategic reserve to 4,004 Bitcoin. So remember, this company was the spinoff. This is all of the Bitcoin mining that Hut 8 was doing. They spun that off. They merged with another company. Hut 8 is still by far the majority owner in this company, such to the extent that they even actually report on a consolidated basis. But you can see these guys are creating their own stash of Bitcoin. So they have 4,000 Bitcoin. That puts them among the leaders in Bitcoin. Now, it's way behind, you know, Marathon has 53,000. They're just on another level. But there's, you've got Riot at maybe 17,000. You've got Cleanspark around 13,000. And then you've got Hut technically with the consolidation. So therefore it includes these 4,000. Hut's at 13,000 of Bitcoin. So I don't want to double count them, but they count here and they count there. Now, they're not giving us all the normal benchmarks that we get. What's your exahash? How many exahash are you running? What was your uptime? How many joules per terahash? What's your efficiency rate? Those are all the stuff they're used to. Well, these guys came up with something totally different. And it's this. As part of its commitment to transparency, American Bitcoin continues to provide periodic updates to its Satoshis per share metric. SPS, Satoshis per share. So they have 4,004 Bitcoin. So multiply that by, 100 million, George?
Oh, is that what the answer is?
In Satoshi, I think there's 100 million Satoshis in a Bitcoin.
Bitcoin, yeah, 100, yeah.
So 4,004 times 100 million, and they're going to compare that to the number of shares of outstanding stock, and that's how they're going to judge themselves as a company. That's one of the metrics they're going to put out there to see how they're doing as a company. Now, I'm not sure, you know, I don't think that really tells the story. I don't like this very much. I want to know what their operations are. How many exahash are they running? How much is it costing them a coin? How much, you know what I mean? And this is, by the way, to get to this 4,004 was a hybrid of mining Bitcoin. And they said they bought some. Here. Bitcoin mining and strategic purchases. So they're still buying Bitcoin at certain times. And they only added 139. I mean, they mined more than that. Which means they sold some of what they mined and then went out and bought Bitcoin. So this is what's going on with American Bitcoin right now. No monthly operational report as of yet. Next month, if we don't get one next month, and by the way, on that topic, Marathon has not put out a monthly operational report. So I fear that we have seen our last Marathon monthly operational report. I think that they have pivoted, right? They did this. Marathon Holdings outlines AI and energy shift. And we're not getting, and I don't know that, but this is already the latest they would have ever put it out if they had put it out today, and they didn't. And they put out their quarterly earnings, and they didn't give us the monthly report in that. So I fear we may have lost another monthly operational report. So they're going to have to keep us very much in the loop on what they're doing with. They can't just say AI. They got to show us what they're doing. Now, they're talking about 400 megawatts, which would be significant revenue, scalable to 1.5 gigawatts. So if this is their future, they may be another one. Now, they're at 60 exahash of Bitcoin mining. So, I don't think they can let that drift away. They spend, their direct cost of Bitcoin is almost on the scale of double what IREN's is. But even they still make money with that. All right. From a cash flow standpoint. ABTC, this is from Sour Melon Gaming. Thanks for the super chat. Thanks for being a longtime member. ABTC's management is a joke and their stock's a scam. I have no interest in their stock. They're not showing us the information that I want to see. They started high and they're moving in the wrong direction from a stock price standpoint. They were too big. Their market cap was bigger than Marathon's when they merged. It made no sense because they're a tiny company compared to Marathon. And
so,
go ahead,
Tom. Do you think when Trump does this strategic reserve and then invests in Bitcoin, mining company, what type of price appreciation are we going to see from that? Do you think? Because obviously he's going to do ABTC, whatever it is, ABTC, and then he's probably going to do Marathon and CleanSpark. Those, and I was thinking also Riot, but
you're thinking
maybe
some type of subsidies. And here's an interesting thing that this administration is doing, and I actually like it better than just giving these companies money. They're asking for equity in return. Right? Why not? Why should the government give money? It can give them the money, but get some equity in return for it. And it funds them to get where they're going. And you're right. I think all those companies, all those companies that have the majority of their operations in America, and I'm sure any penny that they all get will be explicitly tied to must be spent in America if they're going to get it from the U.S. government. But I do think that's coming. I think that's a stimulus that's coming for that industry. And particularly since they now overlap and they're AI. And we are in the mother of all AI races. Trump was talking about being the Bitcoin capital of the world. We need to be the AI leader of the world. So, and I know we have a lot of people from different countries here. So I'm in the United States, so I say we, but I'm talking about the United States is going to be very committed to being the leader in artificial intelligence. But there's several other countries that are in the race, and they're not going away.
Interesting. But I mean, do you think there's any already a price appreciation, or no? Is there none yet? And how much would you think if they announced, like, who was it that gave him 10% ownership?
Intel.
Do you think that helped Intel?
And I didn't follow up for any more than 2 or 3 days on Intel. I'm not sure what kind of a long-term effect that had, but Intel is many magnitudes greater company than these are. So it wouldn't have had as much of an effect. I think if they throw some support behind these companies, it will have immediate dramatic effect. And it's not priced in. You can tell. Here's how I'll tell you it's not priced in. Let's go to the screen. All right, so this was what I was going to show you, but while I'm here, this was October. So we're 1 week into November. October was great, unless, of course, you were Marathon and you were up 0, or Bitcoin, you were down 4%. Riot underperformed. The rest of the Bitcoin miners took off in October, and that is a continuation of the May, June, July, August, September. That was all good months for Bitcoin miners. So the Bitcoin miners have pulled back. I've seen my portfolio shrink, but you got to keep it in perspective. Like, compare it to the first day of the year, or, you know, the bottom. Compare it to, if you want to feel good, go compare. I don't care if you're in these stocks or what stocks you're in. Go compare your portfolio to April 8th, and you'll feel better. So that's not what I was going to show you. What I want to show you is year to date. IREN's up 535%, and they just got crushed over the last 2 days. That leaves them up 535% this year. CIFR up 346%. TeraWolf up 146. Bitfarms is now tied with them, up 146% from the beginning of the year. They did in the middle pull almost a 10x. Hut's up 118. You can see even CleanSpark, Riot, and Hive that are lagging, they're up, 69, 67, 65%. Bitcoin's only up 11% this year. We've had back-to-back years where Bitcoin was up over 100%. So we've never had a 4-year cycle where the fourth year didn't have a blow-off top and, escalate. That did not happen this year. We just had slow, steady, new high, pull back, new high, pull back, new high, pull back. We're only up 11% this year. 2025 is a breather for Bitcoin. I believe 2026 is going to be the year that Bitcoin does more of its thing. And I think it's still going to have a good fourth quarter. So, we have a little bit less than 2 months left. You had Tom Lee on Monday on CNBC saying he thinks Bitcoin's going to hit $200,000 by December 31st. Now, I think he's overly optimistic, to say the least. But I do think it will hit a new all-time high. Is this the finals, George?
This is the finals, Tom.
Final poll, best return for the next 6 months, best high-performance computer. And the choices are CleanSpark, CIFR, Bitfarms, and IREN. So those are the one that won the regional rounds. This is the finals, and it's a little bit of a runaway. IREN right now. So if you got a device where you can vote early, vote often. But right now, IREN's way out in front, and Bitfarms is in second. Although CleanSpark, as I just said that, they're going back. Still, Bitfarms, CleanSpark, and CIFR are duking it out, and IREN's way ahead. But there's time to go. This be real interesting to see. I do think CleanSpark is very, very, very undervalued. If we go, I might have the chart open. If not, we can. So you can see, they didn't quite hit it, but I had a line here at $13.66. They did have 1 day that went below that, and then they ran right back above it. I think they're going to bounce off of this because you can see they're in a similar scenario. They're weeks into a bearish crossover. Today, they went from red to pink. So this could be the start of a nice run for CleanSpark. Now, obviously, if a couple of things happen to make that happen. Number one, if Bitcoin keeps tanking, it's likely that these stocks will struggle in the short term. even if Bitfarms does tank, I do believe it will bounce off of one of those lines of support. It will flash crash down to one of them if that's what happens, and we'll be, that's the if that's the reset we need, so be it. But with Cleanspark, in this period of time, they announced a shift to high performance computing. So they were proudly the only 100% pure play, 100% vertically integrated, top to bottom, start to finish Bitcoin mining company out of all the publicly traded companies. Well, they are not that anymore. They have pivoted to high performance computing with what appears to be a significant commitment. So that's why I say now Marathon just did so. Those are the last two holdouts. In the last 3 weeks, both of those companies pivoted. So now every single Bitcoin miner is also a high performance computing data center company as well. Some of them have totally left Bitcoin mining and they're only data center companies now. Right? Hut 8 doesn't do any more Bitcoin mining. Now they have a subsidiary that they have a major stake in that is only a Bitcoin miner. So they're still in that way indirectly involved. But you're never going to hear anything about TeraWulf's Bitcoin mining anymore. They don't care about it. Bitfarms, I doubt they will buy another machine. What's going to get interesting is the next time, in my opinion, the next time this group of companies considers buying an ASIC machine is going to be in somewhere in mid to late 2027, which is a long time from now, because if they buy something in the middle, then by the next halving, it's going to be obsolete and they're going to have to replace it. And there's just not enough money. So they need to ride these machines out, whatever they're doing. And you can see they've all stopped buying machines. And I think that trend is going to hold for the next year and a half. And then we'll see where Bitcoin is, and we'll see which of the Bitcoin miners stay, in, not even necessarily all in, but heavily in on Bitcoin and go buy. Right. We've got companies, BitDeer's talking about putting out, and the number keeps bumping up and up. I knew it wasn't going to. Initially, they said they were going to have their fourth version of their machine. They make their own machines, and version 4 was going to be 5 joules per terahash. Now they're committing that it will be less than 10. But less than 10 is significantly less than the 15 that's the latest and greatest. Another company just put a 12.8 joules per terahash machine out. So, if we're looking at if they come in at 8 or 9 joules per terahash, and 2 years from now we're at 5 or 6 joules per terahash, you're not going to want these machines that you would have bought today. They're going to be no good after the next halving. Those machines will all go in the garbage. So that's what I think is going on, big picture. I think a lot of governments are getting in on mining Bitcoin, and for them, it's money to waste. So, they don't have the same profitability equation that, these publicly traded companies do. So we're going to see the relationship between the price of Bitcoin and the difficulty level of the Bitcoin network is going to dictate when and if these companies start buying machines again, in my opinion. Old Jock said, of course it's a runaway. No brainer.
Did you see the new cheerleader uniform for the New York Giants?
No.
It's kind of interesting.
Should I
go on X and look at that? Do you get what know what I'm saying?
I'm afraid to look.
You should be.
Cosmic Contrarian is saying, Tom, that's correct. Bitfarms will not buy another ASIC miner. Full transition to energy provider and AI. 100% correct on the machines. So, yeah, and Old Jock saying, can't remember the last time IREN mentioned Bitcoin. And you're right, Old Jock. They literally, I scanned their SEC filing, their press release, and their investor presentation, and they don't tell you how many exahash they have, and they don't even tell you how much Bitcoin they mined in the quarter. They did a quarterly report and didn't tell you how many Bitcoin they mined. They told you what their Bitcoin revenue was, so you could extrapolate a number that's in the ballpark, but we don't know. We don't know how many Bitcoin they mined, and for all we know, every single machine's turned off right now because they've given us no report of how many active exahash they have. And when they stopped doing their monthly reports, I said, okay, but, at least we still get to check in on everybody quarterly. But now it looks like that's not even going to happen. So, particularly in IREN space, and listen, if they've built themselves a runway to get to $10 or $20 billion of revenue in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years without Bitcoin mining, then that's what they're going to do. They'd be crazy not to. And then the upside to their stock is enormous.
Wow. Microsoft, the chief data center architect, wrote down, at this point, I don't think we can overbuild capacity. I don't think we're going to be at a tipping point of overbuilding until 2029 or 2030 for the projects that we have right now.
Thank you. That is a great, great quote, because it goes to the point all of the big tech companies just came out and said, right now, our bottleneck is energy, period. So they're all involved in AI. They're all trying to advance that. And they all came out and said the bottleneck right now is in energy. They need data centers desperately. So this is what has changed my mind in the last 12 months. I didn't know where this was going 12 months ago. Well, I think we know where it's going now. So a lot of you already knew where it was going 12 months ago. I was behind. It took me a longer period of time. But to me now, at this point, there is no doubt. And George, to hear Microsoft say they're years away from, running out of need or demand. Right? That's how IREN can get from 1 gigawatt to 2 gigawatts to 3 gigawatts to 4, 5, 6. I mean, we're going to add a lot of infrastructure to the grid to support all of this high performance computing. And it's not just the large language models. There's a lot of programs that require this. But the large language models, the chat GPTs of the world, do require immense, unfathomable amounts of computing to do what they do.
I'm asking for a friend on this one, guys. Is Nancy Pelosi really worth $280 million?
Friend of yours wants to know.
Friends of mine wants to know. I'm just curious. I just was a wow.
Sourmelon Gaming says Bitmine probably goes out of business now. Yeah, for the Bitcoin mining manufacturers, I don't know what they do, especially since a couple of the big companies have found, Hive gets their own machines. BitDeer makes their own machines and sells them. Marathon's got a relationship to get machines. So, yeah, that's a fair point, Sourmelon Gaming. I mean, I don't even look at those stocks anymore, other than Canaan, because they're also mining Bitcoin, and they seem to be shifting more and more to that. And they did come out with, I think, a 12.8 joule per terahash Bitcoin miner that, if nothing else, they'll just give it to themselves. But they're a very, very small company compared to most of the ones we talk about. And Gary's saying IREN can sell the miners anyway, still top of the line and most efficient. Right. Their entire network is 15 joules per terahash efficiency. So we know that that's where they stopped, at 50 exahash and 15 joules per terahash. So that is a fair point, that they don't have to throw those in the garbage. They can get, even if they get 50 cents on the dollar on those, or 75 cents on the dollar on those, it's not a big deal. So that's probably what they'll do. So good point, Gary. All right. Let's get to a few things here. You want the good news or the bad news, George?
I want the good news. I can't. We know bad news. This is not a bad news session.
All right, then we'll start with the good news. This is from JP Morgan, or as I like to call them, Bitcoin hating JP Morgan. Bitcoin's fair value is $170,000, JP Morgan argues in gold-based model. Using risk capital metrics, the bank says Bitcoin should match 2/3 of gold's private investment base, up from 102K right now. So what that means is JP Morgan analyst predicts that Bitcoin could reach $170,000 within the next 6 to 12 months based on its historical valuation relative to gold. So I think 170 is in a pretty sweet spot from where most of us that are here have talked about. So maybe that will, once we're done crowning a king, and it looks like IREN's going to win this thing, but nod of the hat to CleanSpark in a decent second place at 28%, IREN at 41% as the best buy, CleanSpark at 28% as the second best buy, Bitfarms at 19% as the third best buy, CIFR at 12%, and that's not last place. Remember, this is the finals, so we already eliminated half of the company. Actually, yeah, half the companies. So there's where that stands. And listen, I'm not going to argue with that list. I think TeraWulf, which didn't even make the finals, I think that's very undervalued. I think Core Scientific, which I'm glad you brought up, George, because it's a company we stopped talking about because we thought they were going to be private because it looked like CoreWeave was buying them, and then they rejected that offer. And they have a lot of infrastructure. So now it's a little bit of a double-edged sword because they rejected that offer from CoreWeave, and CoreWeave's their biggest customer by a mile. So, and most of those contracts were 2 years with extensions. So, you know, if CoreWeave finds a plan B, they might move on. But I don't know that that'll be a problem for Core Scientific because, like George just said, there's no end in sight to the demand for this power. So you've got JP Morgan of all places talking Bitcoin $170,000. So that is the good news. Should I put a poll up, George? I think we got to call this one. IREN wins.
Yeah, and as well as they should.
IREN, and in second place, honorable mention to CleanSpark in second place.
I didn't know that, and I'm sorry because I'm scrolling through X right now to talk about things, but I didn't know that Chuck Schumer's mouth to your ears, so you guys can hear this. They're still asking for the subsidies, which is $1.5 trillion. You notice how they never give that number?
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. That's a dishonest conversation. They could turn the switch right now.
But they want $1.5 trillion for next year. Not a 10 billion, not 20 billion. They want $1.5 million for subsidies for healthcare. That's insane.
That's got to get hashed out when they make a budget. You can't just make a piece of a budget. So we started this. I had a little bit of a rant. It's frustrating to me that we are now in the longest shutdown in the history of the American government. There's just no excuse for it. I'm sorry, and anybody that may be listening, but you guys don't do a whole lot of work when you are at work. Now you're not even going to work. So it boggles my mind.
Yeah, it's just crazy to me.
I'm not talking about the workers that are employed. I'm talking about the people in charge of this shutdown. I'm talking about the Senate, most specifically. Old Jack thinks JP Morgan might be setting us up with this call. That could be. All right, well, we did the good news, so we got to do the bad news.
No.
I choose not to believe this. I'm going to start the poll, and then I'll get to the bad news. So I'm going to say JP Morgan thinks Bitcoin's going to 170,000 in the next 12 months. What do you guys think? Are we going there? Meanwhile, at the other end of the spectrum, Bitcoin market now, quote, extremely bearish, says CryptoQuant. On-chain metrics show Bitcoin entering an extremely bearish phase with a potential downside to 91K. Now, that wouldn't surprise me. We'll go back to the one-day chart. I had a line at 93 and a line just under 89. So 91, I don't think anybody can stand here and rightfully say, wow, I will be shocked if we hit 91, because that's still short of a 30% pullback, which Bitcoin gets all the time. In the last bull market cycle, it got a 55% pullback. I don't think we're in store for anything like that. And then it says even 72K if key support fails. That I do not believe is on the table. That's my personal opinion. That is outside. So if we go look at the 1 day, right, this line at 99.8, just under 100, is holding strong. It's held every single day since we went above it. So to me, that's a very strong line. But you got to go down. They're talking about, let me get. They're talking about this line. That's a 41% pullback. So I'm going to just say no. I got another red line right here that I don't think we'll ever get to.
What's the number? 83,000? Was it 83 or 82?
Well, 70, they said 72,000.
Oh, really?
Here, let me go back to it. Verify.
And that's what, 46% down?
It was 42%, so 43 or 44% down, because I went to 73.
Has that ever happened before?
Well, in the last bull market, we had a 55% pullback right before we skyrocketed to the all-time high. So they got everybody out, and big money won the last time around, big time. They won twice.
But it makes sense. You know what I mean? I'd do it. They think that's going to happen before the end of the year?
91K or even 72K. So thank you. Good question. Because they then go on to say, though Glassnode sees it as a mid-cycle correction rather than full capitulation. So they're not calling permanent bear market crypto winter. They're seeing a major correction, potentially a capitulation at a very low number, a flash crash type of an event. I don't think we're going to numbers that low, but you can't take anything off the table with Bitcoin. It's capable of doing anything, but just as capable as of doing that, it could go to 200. And for that matter, as we look at the poll, if you guys want to vote, if you're on a device where you can vote, right now, 80, it just clicked off of it, but it was 80-20. 80%, now 77% think, yes, Bitcoin will get to $170,000 in the next 12 months? My answer to that is yes. My price target, which I consider the low end, I feel like I try to. I'm both optimistic and conservative. And I said 175. So, and I wouldn't be surprised to see 200, and I wouldn't be surprised to see 2.25. Some of these other wild high numbers, they would surprise me, they would shock me, but that would be great. And you never know. You never know. Pogo thinks I've gone postal.
They're saying that people in Florida, real estate agents in Florida, are getting flooded with calls while their jobs are moving from New York to Florida. Just FYI.
Oh, it's the talk. It's all the talk down here.
And I can tell you guys, this will be a good. I had some land in Florida. Don't believe the hype. I sold the land in 3 hours. 3 hours, guys.
Above ask.
Yep. So I'm still in shock. And it closes next week. So when everybody says Florida's falling apart, somebody's got money.
There's going to be a lot of people that move to Florida either which way. The demographics have shown that. It's already begun. It's just a natural, and it's a baby boomer thing. It's a boomer thing. We don't happen to be boomers, FYI. Not that there's anything wrong with that. We are well under the threshold. So they're talking about in its latest weekly report, CryptoQuant said Bitcoin's drop under the 365-day moving average of 102,000 marked the loss of a key technical and psychological support that previously defined the bottom of this bull cycle. So we'll see. They don't seem to have a lot of conviction on Bitcoin. This is supposed to be FUD, but they're saying it's going to go to 91. Maybe if things get awful, it's going to go to 72, but don't worry because it's just a mid-cycle correction anyway. So, even the bad news isn't that bad. And Bitcoin Macro saying put the weekly 50 week. I don't know if I have that saved as a favorite. I have the 200 day, the 200 week, which is basically your 4-year cycle. Let's go look at. So we did run into a little resistance here in the short term at $104,000. But listen, if we're going to trade sideways this has been days now. We've been trading sideways. This was Tuesday. It's now the end of Friday. So from Tuesday to Friday, we traded from 99 to 104,000, up and down and up and down. So nothing really to see here. What I will say is last Friday, we closed at almost 110,000. So there was over the weekend a drop off, and we just haven't gotten that back yet. So we're closing at a much lower place this week than we did last week. One day. Play. But you can see this is a series of high, higher high, higher high, higher high, higher high. I mean, this was just in October. That was last month. So I don't think this has broken. This line of support has held. We may go test, right? You saw us test this here way back in May. So maybe we'll test that again. We'll see. Not to me, that's not going to be, panic time. I do want to show this. A little easier to see. This is the 200-day simple moving average. So we recaptured this. We lost this for a period of time, right? And if you remember, this was peak fear. April 8th, remember, that's when the bottom fell out. Everybody was pure panic. That was just enough days for the tariff thing to set in, and it was going to be the end of the world. And it wasn't just Bitcoin. The entire market did the same thing. I'll just real quickly show you something to put it in perspective. Here, this is what the Qs did. April 7th, April 8th, right? This was panic time. The Qs are the NASDAQ. This is what the S&P 500 did. Identical. April 7th, April 8th, the bottom. And I did something I've never done and probably will never do again. I called the bottom on this day because this was probably the most obvious bottom I've ever seen since I've been doing this. And it turned out to be correct. Even that's dangerous. My advice is never try to pick a bottom or pick a top, but this was just so unbelievably obvious. And everything bottomed out, including Bitcoin. So the point was we lost the 200-day simple moving average during that period. So that was, but you see, once we recaptured it, we've held it since April, all the way until the beginning of this week. This was Monday. So if I zoom in, you can see we were fighting to hold the line. This was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We opened and closed above the line. Monday, closed below the line. And once we did that, boom, another, all the way down to the next line of support. So once we lost this line, we went right down to this line. But now you can see we're holding this line. So we'll see. So the next thing that I'm looking for is not only do we need to hold this line, we need to recapture the 200-day simple moving average. That's where we need to go to get on a trajectory to set yet another new all-time high in this bull run. And I think that's the way this bull run is going. We're getting a little bit at a time, and it's because things are smoothed out a lot by the massively more access to Bitcoin through the ETFs and other vehicles, through Microstrategy, which has slowed down significantly in buying their Bitcoin, but they still, they have bought 641,000 Bitcoin. I do want to show you where they're getting at, because I saw somewhere very early in the stream, somebody was asking the question. Strategy, Microstrategy, now known as Strategy, their MNAV is now 1.27. So this is down from 3.14 at its peak. So this is dramatic, but it still hasn't hit 1, and it still hasn't gone below 1, meaning the value of its holdings, the value of its Bitcoin, is still above the market cap of the company. So we've seen some of these other treasury companies go below 1. We've seen some of them go way below 1. I don't think that's what's the future holds for Microstrategy, but let me see, because I got their chart open. You can see today they held a crucial line, and they candle wicked below it, but they rallied back. This goes back to February of 2025. That line has held. And from there, we ran up, right? We were down, this thing got down to $219 today. So it closed the day at just under $242. If you guys remember, I sold this at $349. I was scared. I said, I'm getting out, and I got into this. So I am now up 573% on that money instead of down 31%. So it's been a very rough run. The question is, is that the pain? Did we just hit support? Right? We pulled all the way back to my red line of support. And when they go under one of the red lines, usually that means bad things are, look out below. But it held. So is this going to bounce back? Is this right? This has fallen out of favor. Is it going to come back in the same way that I'll show you? Here's the ETFs. October 29th, 470 million of outflow. October 30th, 488 million. 191 million, 186 million. November 4th, 566 million of outflow. November 5th, 137 million of outflow. That was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 red days in a row. And they weren't a little bit red. This was a horrific trend. Well, yesterday, that trend was broken. We were in the black. We were inflows into the ETFs, $239.9 million. So, BlackRock's back buying again. They went through a phase where they were doing zero or selling after a super long phase of days buying in a row. So this is all ebb and flow. So yeah, the ETF sold off, and maybe we've bottomed and they're going to start buying back in. Maybe not. Maybe there's another leg of pain to come, because it's pretty hard to tell looking at the 1 day. I mean, again, we got down on Tuesday. RSI got as low as it's been in since March 1st. So most of the year. So this is, basically a reset. That doesn't mean we couldn't potentially, do a full reset and before we go back up. But I think it looks like this has reset, and mainly because on the MACD, you can see we've turned from red candles on the histogram to pink candles on the histogram. That is moving in the right direction. We'll see. All of this looks encouraging to me. These things happening together with Bitcoin holding this line of support, testing and holding it 1, 2, 3, 4 days in a row. So I'm encouraged with that. But to look back on what this week looked like, this was not a good week. It wasn't. Riot down 14% this week. Marathon down 13% this week. Cleanspark down. I got this color wrong. Bitcoin's way up here. Bitcoin's down 5%. So this should be yellow. I didn't change that. 8%, 10%, 10%, 12%. This was a rough week. Other than CIFR, which was up 11%, and IREN, which was up 3%. But again, if I go to year to date, this is even skewed because this is, IREN's up so much, 535%, and CIFR 346%, that it makes these stocks look like they're not doing very well. Well, I mean, TeraWulf's 2.5x'd, and so has Bitfarms. HUT's doubled. Cleanspark's up 69% RIOT, 67%, 65%. But this is why I bought Marathon this week. In the year 2025, Marathon is down 5%. In the year 2024, Marathon was down 29%. In the last 2 years, Marathon's down over 30% as a company. They've more than doubled as a company in size. They have their market cap's worth of Bitcoin on their balance sheet, never mind their cash and whatnot. So, you know, maybe this isn't going to run the hardest and the furthest, but to me, we're now 2 years into this lagging. So I think, to me, this is what I've been loading up on. I think it's going to get its turn, and that doesn't mean it's going to go catch up to CIFR. I'm not saying that. It's just a regression to the mean type of a concept where you can see somewhere between 70 and 100% move up is what was going on this year. And they're minus 5%. So I think they're due, they're overdue, and I think they just did what everybody's been waiting for them to do, which is finally put out a press release that says, hey, we're in on AI. We're in a big way with a potential roadmap to, I think it was 1.5 gigawatts of power for high performance computing. So I got another person telling me, I didn't talk about it the last time, but it said, Tom, look at Bitcoin on the last government shutdown. It went back up pretty good after December 2018 through January 2019. So let's hope that's the case. And let's hope somebody has some common sense and opens the United States government back up. I understand they're going to argue about the budget, and that's its own process. But in the meantime, let's open the government. That's my 2 cents. I have nothing, obviously, no sway in this matter whatsoever. But I think we would all prefer that the government.
Has anybody really been affected by the government shutdown? I know it's going to get really bad here because of the planes, but has anybody experienced anything else? I went to the UPS. I went to the, the post office the other day, and everybody was working, grumbling but working.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are showing up to work, not getting paid, assuming that, as in previous shutdowns, they're going to end up getting paid just on delay, which is very difficult listen, we've had a lot of inflation here. It's tough to pay the bills. So that's very difficult on those people. And some people have been sent home altogether. The Bureau of Labor and Statistics got sent home, all of them. We didn't get a job. Today would have been jobs number. Well, guess what? The jobs number is, and I ask you to guess because we don't know, because the Bureau of Labor and Statistics is closed, so they can't tell us. So this is part of the Fed's problem. The Fed now has a void, a vacuum of information, and it's going to give Jerome Powell that wiggle room potentially, and you can see they're pricing this in. Refresh. This is the Fed watch tool. This was once at 100%, to put it in perspective. We're now at 66.5% chance of a rate cut in the December meeting. This was 100% at one point. Then it slipped to 99, where it stayed for weeks. And now it's back to 66%. So 1/3, 2/3. So we don't know. This is uncertainty in the market. The market hates this. This is exactly what the market does not want to see. So this is hurting Bitcoin. It's hurting the market in general.
I was just looking. You know what the longest filibuster was?
No.
1964, the Civil Rights Act. And guess who shut it down? It was the Demis.
And that was the longest filibuster. That's insanity.
Yeah, but it's interesting because probably most people would get that wrong.
Yeah.
You know what's crazy? I had to change my own oil on my Tahoe because the engine's recalled and no one will change the oil. It's kind of weird, but whatever. So you don't know the filter, and so you go to the parts store and you used to have these books, right? You just go through the page, look for your car, scroll. I just threw it in the chat GPT. Hey, what size filter do I need for this? They're like, you need blah blah blah. Oh, would you like to know for every single model of oil filter there is? Hey, do you want to know the best oil to use? I was just like, it's insane. It's absolutely insane.
That's the power. And it's only just getting started.
It's going to make us so dumb, though.
Old Jack saying Mara is like a version of MicroStrategy, except for the fact that they're effectively acquiring Bitcoin at cost. There's a line of reasoning to that. 150 is actually a higher number. I know everybody always says that number, but if you look at the financial statements, it doesn't calculate out that way. And that includes depreciation. So you have to remember their equation today, as they sit here today, they've already paid 100% for all of their Bitcoin mining machines. So from a cash flow standpoint and from an economic standpoint, they actually make massive EBITDA. So it is different than MicroStrategy. And there is a reason for them to keep mining Bitcoin. Now, they should keep getting more efficient at it if they do this right, and they should diversify into high-performance computing, which they now finally, a couple of days ago, said they're going to do. And I get it. You're talking about the two largest holders of Bitcoin. MicroStrategy is the largest publicly traded holder of Bitcoin in the world, and Marathon's the second largest. But it's a distant second. You're talking about 641,000 to 53,000. But
well, since we're getting to the end of the stream, what do you think about David Schultz as being Satoshi? What?
Rumors, speculation.
Everything's a rumor when it comes to Satoshi.
I think at this point, if the real Satoshi did, I guess there is a way they could prove it. They could move some coins.
Right.
So that'd be the only way I'd believe it. If somebody came out and said, I am Satoshi and I'm going to move 17 coins. Although then you never know. If Satoshi was a good sport, maybe he would do that and we still wouldn't know. But I would accept that. I would accept that as proof positive. If somebody came out and claimed the coins and moved them.
Do you want me to move a coin this weekend, Tom?
Do what you got to do. You don't want to upset the market. I think it's good that nobody knows who Satoshi is.
That would make the market go.
I think we're never going to know the answer to that. And I think that's the best possible scenario for Bitcoin. It makes it even stronger.
I'm going to send a Satoshi to them this weekend.
So that they're active.
Yeah. I'll see you guys.
All right, George, have a good weekend. We're going to wrap it up. This poll finished at 71% think Bitcoin's going to hit 170,000. So that was a majority. It was as high as 80, but 70, call it 70-30. So still optimistic that there's a lot of room left to the upside. I'm still optimistic. I know a lot of portfolios probably didn't have the greatest week of all time this week, so I get it. Hang in there. We'll see what comes next. I see, who knows what happens short term? Who knows what happens over the weekend or next week? But I still think, even I'm going to close on this. Even the bad news, even the extremely bearish headline talked about a fact that this is a mid-cycle correction, not the end of the cycle, not the bear market crypto winter. So even the pessimists think this thing's going to still keep running. So that gives me the hope I need to get through the weekend. We'll pick this up on Monday. Tuesday, we will see all the members on the Tuesday members only live stream. Thank you guys so much. We will see you then. And thank everybody for joining us, and have a great weekend.